Hello, Path of Exile 2 enjoyers, and in today's video I'm going to be covering the three biggest changes that are coming to 0.3, which starts on this Friday, 29th of August. There are a lot of changes coming in 0.3, but as I said, I'm going to cover the three biggest changes because they are the three core complaints that the entire scope of the Path of Exile 2 audience have had with the game. There are a few things that are yet to come to the game, and we can expect those in future patches. One of those things being the changes to towers and what they're going to do with those. That's going to happen in the future, probably in 0.4. Whereas the three things I'm covering today have been problems pretty much since the beginning. And as I said, almost the entire audience have had some kind of issue with it in some way or form. So the first of these major changes is asynchronous trade. So currently in Path of Exile 1 and in Path of Exile 2, when you want to trade an item, you have to go to the trade website, either via your second monitor or on your phone or whatever. You search for the item that you're looking for. It lists all of the available players that are currently online. You select one that you want. You click on the whisper button. It sends them a message in game. And then hopefully that person will right-click on your name in response to your whisper, invite you to their party, you go to their hideout, you then wait for them to acquire the item from the stash and trade with you. Now currently there's many problems with that, such as sometimes they don't respond. There's been many times where I've literally whispered 20 people and not a single person has responded. There are times where you whisper the person too soon after they listed it, they panic thinking they've listed it too cheap, and they end up repricing it. Or of course there's an item that you really want, but the player's offline, so you can't trade with them anyway, especially if they've ended up quitting the league at that point. This new system, on the other hand, solves a lot of those issues. For example, now you no longer have to interact with the other players, be they offline or otherwise. You simply click on the secure item button instead of whispering them. You are automatically teleported to their hideout, and you get access to essentially a shop that they've set up, a tab that they've set up specifically with all the items they want to utilize with this system. The item that you want is automatically highlighted, so you just drag and drop it into your inventory. But whilst you're there, you are also given the opportunity to peruse their other items that they've got listed. You can just see them there available. So if it's someone who lists their items very well, you can just be like, oh, I'll also take this, this, and this, and this while I'm at it. Hey, not only that, but they've also brought the trade website into the game, so no longer will you have to use your phone or a second monitor or whatever other device to functionally search for these items. You can just stay in game, use all the search function, well, the vast majority of the search functionality within the game, secure the item, get teleported, not have to interact with anyone, just grab the item from their shop and again put it into your inventory. Now there's a bunch of other little changes they've added to prevent griefing or annoying behavior. So for example, if you list an item, you are given a grace period before it actually becomes available in the search. In case you want to change it, maybe you listed it for 1 exalt when you meant to list it for 1 divine. I know I've done that on occasion. But on the other end of things, once that grace period has ended, if they want to remove the item or change the price, they can't do so without a cooldown. Meaning, once they've listed that item and it's available in the search, that's what it's going to sell for. So no longer we have people panicking going, oh no, I've listed it too cheap because there's 20 people in my hideout. I better change the price. No, sucks to be you. That's what it's selling for. Much like with the currency exchange, there's also a gold fee now. So this is for when you purchase the item. So when you go to this person's hideout, you're going to buy their item. You pay whatever currency price they've listed, 1 exalt, 1 divine, etc. But also a small gold fee will come attached to that. What this means is that if you are someone who likes to flip items or you're a bot, you can't really do that without first accumulating a huge amount of in-game gold, which can't be traded, of course. Now, this won't completely eliminate item flippers and things like that, but it will significantly reduce how much we see that kind of behavior. I am a little sad to see that obviously that will reduce player interaction, because obviously interacting with other humans can be fun, and sometimes you'll maybe foster a friendship after trading an item, or maybe they say something nice to you or whatever. But the convenience of being able to trade so quickly, so efficiently, and with, of course, offline players, meaning there's going to be substantially more items available to trade, is a pretty good benefit. It also does mean that there's going to be some kinks to work out. The economy is probably going to be a little bit weird as this is brand new. Obviously, there's going to be substantially more items available because offline players are going to be included. So do expect some prices to be a little bit wonky for a while, or some fluctuations in the market. But overall, this is a pretty huge win to save a lot of time and keep you in game and keep you farming without having to waste your time messaging people that are AFK or simply ignoring you. So the next major change I'm going to say is movement. And what I mean by this is they've implemented a number of changes that all like compile on top of themselves to make a broader change. The first change that they've made within movement is they've added sprinting. So what sprinting is now after you perform a dodge roll, if you hold down spacebar after doing the dodge roll, you will suddenly gain a huge buff in movement speed. I believe they said it was 50%, which will enable you to run away from monsters, weave between packs of monsters, and be able to basically outrun the vast majority of mobs in the game. Of course, that's very, very powerful. So there is a little caveat. If you do get hit whilst sprinting, you do get heavy stunned. I think it's safe to say there's going to be a bit of an adjustment period where people will be going a bit ham with the space bar and getting knocked down all the time. There's probably going to be some complaints about that. But for the most part, I think that is going to be a skill issue. You've just got to learn how and when to utilize the sprint feature, not go too excessive with it. If you get really good at it, it will actually be quite beneficial, I imagine, in boss fights for when you're trying to dodge major or massive slams and things like that. And of course, with it being a new feature, there's going to be some kind of wonky stuff like a projectile flying from off screen that might hit you. That is going to feel a little bit unfair. I imagine over time they're going to make adjustments, so probably like if a projectile comes out of nowhere, it's more damage rather than just an immediate heavy stun, things like that. Obviously, kinks will need to be worked out. There are other minor adjustments that they've made that just get you back into your regular movement speed sooner rather than later. For example, there's no movement speed penalty at all when you're reloading a crossbow. If you do an attack, the end of the animation will happen quicker, I suppose, as a way to phrase it. So you'll get to your regular movement speed sooner rather than later. And there's just loads of these tiny, like, micro adjustments they've made that just makes for a more mobile experience, mobile as in more mobility, without actually compromising the type of combat that they've implemented into Path of Exile 2 in comparison to, say, Path of Exile 1. Now, all of that, of course, is a very welcome addition to the game. The core complaint being that progressing through the campaign was a little bit of a slog, so now you can get through things quicker because of the sprint. Your general movement is going to feel quicker when you're attacking and engaging the various monsters in the game. All of that just makes for us a tighter, faster experience. This, of course, is going to be something that particularly pleases Path of Exile 1 players who are used to having so much means to mobility, be it through movement skills or Quicksilver Flash that just give you free movement speed, things like that. So that's something that they've wanted for quite a while. Personally, I wasn't too bothered about the movement speed within the game, but I appreciate the fact that I can now move faster and thus clear maps faster, which is always a nice thing to have. The next major change I want to talk about is a pretty broad topic, to be fair. If you want to get all of the details, I would just recommend looking at the reveal. It's an hour and a bit long, but in a nutshell, they are making big adjustments to balance and in various ways. Some of those adjustments include adding well over 100 notable passives to the passive skill tree, so you're spending less points on travel nodes, attribute nodes, trying to get from one cluster of nodes to another. You can find more interesting things along the way. A lot of these notables are a lot more interesting and a lot more build defining. For example, the hollow palm technique, which allows you to use unarmed attacks with quarterstaff skills. Another change in terms of balance and build viability more specifically is the change to support gems that they're making. So initially, the idea with support gems is you could only use one support gem for all of the skills that you have got. The idea of this was to lead the player to having more difficult decisions, to make them really think out their build and choose carefully where they wanted to place their support gems. Unfortunately, the end result was what would happen is you'd pick your best support gems and give those all to one specific skill, which would then mean that you probably wouldn't even use 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 gems in your other skills, and even more so, you wouldn't bother with like combination skills where there'd be some kind of payoff at the end of it, because all of the good gems were in that one major skill, which would then outperform the payoffs of using combination skills. That restriction is no more. You can use any support gem you like as many times as you like. So if you've got loads of projectile skills, you can add multiple projectiles to all of those projectile skills. The cool thing about that is it now means that those combination skills with those big payoffs are suddenly a lot more viable, and it's going to make players want to utilize them a lot more. Yes, you're going to probably see some builds that use exactly the same gems in every skill. I have no doubt that that's going to be a thing. That's something they did initially want to avoid. But Jonathan and Mark, the directors of Path of Exile 2, have stated that from their testing, it turns out that's not that big a problem due to the nature of how the skills interact with each other and things like that. The more build variety, which for me, as someone who likes making their own builds, that's a huge boon. I'm very much looking forward to just being able to do what I want, basically, and just fulfill the memes and archetypes that I really want to lean into. Whilst we're talking about support gems, they're actually adding what you can essentially call unique support gems. Now, these uniques can only be added to one skill, but they have significantly bigger effects. They're a chase item. Most of them you'll get from killing monsters rather than through uncut gems. And again, some of the effects that they add are more build defining rather than just make damage number go up. They've changed the attribute requirements on gems, so you no longer need hundreds and hundreds of strength int for level 20 plus gems. That's all been lowered. The mana cost of skills has gone down by 25%, I believe they said. And because of all of those aforementioned changes, they have subsequently had to make adjustments to ascendancies as well. They've made them a little bit more interesting. They've buffed the Monk of Chayula, for example. The Witch Hunter node Weapon Master, instead of giving you 20 weapon skill points, now gives you 100. So it's going to be very easy to basically make a dual spec build with the Witch Hunter, which is probably actually what I'm going to be doing for my League starter. And they've made a big adjustment to crafting as well, which of course affects balance. So now when it comes to crafting, there's the new unveiling mechanic, which if you've played Path of Exile 1, you're going to be familiar with. That comes with the new Abyssal League. They've tiered some of the currency. So you've got like regular transmutes, but then you've got greater transmutes and perfect transmutes. I think there's another one in there as well. And basically the higher the tier of the currency, the guarantee or the likelihood of getting a higher tier of affix added. So for example, the perfect ones add at least tier 3 affixes. There's going to be new uniques. There's now exceptional items that can have plus 30 quality or an additional socket. There's a whole host of changes that have an impact on balance. In summary though, there's just going to be so much more build variety, which again was a core complaint for the majority of players because they ended up just focusing in on one skill and just making that one skill their powerhouse. Now, just to reiterate, these are all new changes and this is an early access game. We're going to come across some kinks, some weirdness, some unexpected behavior. There's going to be some problems that will likely arise from these changes. Do expect that. I don't anticipate there'll be a lot, but there's going to be some things that may catch you off guard or don't behave in quite the way you were expecting. And these will again be adjusted over time. So as long as you set your expectations to know that these are all new and not going to be perfect immediately right off the bat, then you should be fine. Overall though, I think the quality of the game is very much improved just by addressing those 3 core complaints. And as I said earlier in the video, there's more to come in 0.4, mostly the end game. So this 0.3, this patch, this league was mostly to focus on like the core issues with the game. And then 0.4 is going to be very likely adding the druid. And then of course, addressing the end game and making more adjustments and things like that. They have said specifically about towers that they don't like how towers currently function and the type of behavior that they add to the game. For example, the idea of the Atlas is you want to explore the Atlas, but what you instead do is you go, well, I've got 7 towers all in a cluster here, so I'm going to focus all in this area and not actually explore and see what other random things have been spawned or added. There's more stuff they've added to the Atlas as well. But again, if you want to see all the details, do watch the reveal. If you're that curious, there is a lot and it will blow your mind. What do you folks think about the changes though? I mean, I'm extraordinarily happy. I'm not going to white knight the game and think everything's fixed and solved and there's no problems to still be addressed. There of course are, but overall, I'm extraordinarily stoked for this league. I'm going to be playing a lot of builds, pumping out some build guides, and just having a jolly good time. But is there anything that you have seen that's been added that you don't like? Oh, do bear in mind, we don't know what's on the passive tree yet. So I've seen some people going, oh no, this character or this class has been killed completely. And it's like, well, you don't know that. Don't jump to conclusions. Be wary, of course. People make mistakes at the end of the day. But is there anything that you know for certain you just straight up don't like? Or is there something that I haven't listed today that you're really, really stoked about and you can't wait to experiment with? Let me know in the comments down below. While you're there, maybe give the video a like if you found this helpful. Subscribe if you're not already. And I'll be streaming this league on twitch.tv/Brian the Pirate. So if you want to hang out whilst I'm live and talk about the mortar cannon build that I'm probably going to league start with, and various other things to do with Path of Exile 2, I'd love to see you there. That's going to be it from me though. Thank you all very much for watching. Farewell. I'll remember you.